was lying in bed the other night and I was just drifting off to sleep, and when I say I was on the cusp of unconsciousness, when an idea sprung into my mind for a brilliant video, and that was ranking all of my Pan That palettes that I have tried to finish. Stan agrees, it's a good idea. So I've been panning for a very, very long time. I've been panning eyeshadow palettes and I've also been panning face palettes. So in this video are going to be two separate rankings. I'm going to start with my face palettes, then I'm going to go on to my eyeshadow palettes. I kind of thought about doing it as one big ranking, but eyeshadow palettes and face palettes are so different. I wanted to give them their own time to shine, and I just think it would be a really good walk down memory lane. I'm going to show you guys what the palettes looked like when I first rolled them in versus what they looked like in the finale, so we can just have a good old, have a good throwback. Let's do it, why not? But just before we do jump into the video today, guys, if you have not already, definitely like and subscribe. I'm trying so hard to hit 7,000 subscribers. We are so close. That's going to be my little Christmas present. Thank you. Thank you so much. I do a lot of project panning, as you're about to see in this video. I do a lot of bright, fun, colourful makeup. Today, I'm rocking the blues. This is a get ready with me coming live in a few days. It is talking about how I have uploaded every single day for the past 2 years. There's a lot of thoughts that are going through my mind. It's been a little bit of an emotional one, but you know what? You're gonna have to wait a few days to hear my thoughts on that. It is a massive celebration here on this channel. So I mean, subscribe, because I've uploaded every single day for 2 years. That's a pretty good achievement. My eye has started to leak, which is amazing. We're just going to ignore it and we're going to carry on. So I started with Pan That palette, and then I think like a year in, I introduced Pan That face palette. Now, there are a few Pan That palettes that I'm not going to mention. So products like the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette, I spent like a month panning that. I'm not going to count that as a Pan That palette. Like, things that didn't really last, I'm not really going to count. And so, you know what? Let's just jump into it. So I do have my list here. Let's start with face palettes. So face palettes have been really, really interesting for me, actually. I definitely started doing them later than normal Pan That palettes, and I've really enjoyed it. Face palettes definitely do get neglected by me, and that's a massive reason why I wanted to start this little challenge, to get some use on face palettes, because so many of them just get thrown to the back of my drawers and I just don't use them. So having it as a set target to try and finish by the end of the year has been really, really fun. At number 4 is definitely my biggest regret. This was my first ever Pan That face palette, and I learned a lot from this. This is my Anastasia Aurora Glow Kit, and this was indeed my first ever Pan That face palette. Now, this was all highlighters, which I have learned, don't do that. Don't pan something with the same type of product in it 6 times, because you can only use one of those products every day. If you pan a blush, bronzer, and a highlight in a palette, you can use each of those every day. This is what it ended up looking like in the finale. I'm pretty sure we did quite well on this, considering it was a whole highlight palette. I'm not that mad. You know what? I'm not. This again was a massive learning curve for me. I remember really liking these products. They were kind of those like 2016 colourful highlighters, and they really got me into more colourful makeup. They were like my little dip in the toe in. I remember buying this from TK Maxx, which is not exactly renowned for the nicest and newest and freshest makeup on the market. So this was probably really, really old when I finished it. Well, I didn't finish it. I got quite far away from finishing it, but at this point, I don't think I realised how difficult makeup was to finish, and I thought, yeah, I can have this done in a year, yeah. I thought that I would be using the colourful shades as eyeshadows all the time. I quickly realised that that is not how I choose to do my makeup. I don't like using highlights on my eyes, apart from inner corners, just because I have so many beautiful eyeshadows that I could be using as eyeshadows. Why am I using highlights as eyeshadows? You know what I mean? Like, the logic was there. I would use them on my eyes and get them done, but in reality, it just didn't work like that. Would I ever pan this palette again? No. The reason this is at the bottom of the list is because this was just an awful choice, and I didn't know that at the time, obviously, because it was my first little Pan That face palette project. So a terrible, terrible choice from me like 4 years ago. I would never ever do this again. If you are looking for your perfect Pan That Face palette, find something with a bronzer, a blush, and a highlight in there at least, because then you can get really good progress on it. I did end up throwing this away or decluttering this at the end of the year because I was just a little bit fed up with it, but I enjoyed it. It was fine. Not the best though. Next, at number 3, we definitely go up in enjoyment quite a lot. This is my Huda Summer Solstice, and I'm really proud of this. This was another TK Maxx find, which, you know what, we'll talk about that in another video and another day, because TK Maxx, yikes. But I did end up frankening a shade or two from the Sofx Revolution palette, which we will talk about later in this video in here as well, to use as a blush. This is how it finished the year. Really, really good progress. I'm really, really proud of this. This was my first year where I was like, oh my god, I've actually done it. This was definitely going off the failure of the Aurora Glow Kit. I chose something with a bronzer, a blush, and a highlight in there, and that gave me some real motivation to keep going with this. I think with the Aurora Glow Kit, the progress was so slow, and it was obviously because I had one product type in that palette. With the Huda, I flew through quite a lot of the shades because I could use 3 or more of these shades every single day, and obviously that meant a lot more progress. This was the palette that got me really in love with Pan That Face palette. I feel like the Aurora Glow Kit was just like grit your teeth and get through it. This one I really started to enjoy, and I started to find the real love for Pan That Face palette. I really loved the glowy bronzer that was in this. I thought it was so beautiful, and I was so proud of that when that was finished. I used it just as a bronzer topper on my skin. I do have very, very dry skin, so a lot of the times if I use a matte bronzer, it can just look a little bit too dry. I am wearing a matte bronzer today, and you know what? I could do with a little bit of a glowy sheen. You can see my face is very, very matte, and it's just because my skin's dry as hell. I really liked a lot of these shades. I didn't really like the blush topper that was in the bottom corner. This was kind of like a almost purpley blue duochrome blush topper, and it made me look a little bit hypothermic, and I remember really struggling with that. And I remember very, very early on in this project saying, you know what, I'm not going to work on this. It's just not nice. I did go into hate panning territory quite a lot around this time, and it really does take it out of you. So if you are panning something that you really don't like right now, just put it away. Life is too short. Just bin it, give it to someone, get it out your life, because no, just don't. And I definitely learned that lesson when trying to pan the Huda Summer Solstice, because like no one wants to do that. But the Franken blush was gone, the highlight was gone, and the bronzer was gone from what I remember, and I'm so proud of that. I think this was my best Pan That Face palette year to date, which is absolutely amazing, and I'm really proud of myself for it. So even though this is at number 3, it's still really good. The reason why it's at number 3 and not higher up is because I didn't enjoy it as much as some of the others that I'm about to talk about. So let's talk about number 2. These were my Zoeva duos. So they were technically 2 palettes, 2 little duos I was working on, and I was trying to finish them by the end of the year. Obviously, that's the point of Pan That Face palette, either trying to finish or get as close as you can to finishing a product by the end of the year. Now, this is when my realization that blush is a demon came to light. This is how I ended the project. This was tough. 2 blushes was a lot to try and get through, and I learned a hell of a lot here as well. I feel like every year for Pan That palette, whether that be Pan That Face palette or Pan That eyeshadow palette, you learn so much. I think with the Huda, it threw me off a little bit because that Franken blush was quite easy to finish, and I didn't even touch the blush topper. So it didn't really go into my brain how difficult blushes were to finish. The Zoeva year really solidified that for me. Let me tell you that for free. I actually still have these blushes with me here, as you can see. I didn't get close to finishing either of these 2, which I really thought I would have at least this one finished. This is a year of progress on a blush, and you can see, obviously the pan is there, but like it's not close to being done whatsoever. In the Zoeva year, I only finished the bronzer, which was a little bit gutting for me, I'm not gonna lie, but I did really enjoy it. I think I enjoyed it more than the Huda because they were proper products. They weren't like Frankens, so I felt like I was achieving more. I feel like the Huda, like obviously it flew by because they were like Franken products. There were bits of eyeshadow in there and like it wasn't a proper blush. These were proper full-on products. And when I finished that bronzer, I was so excited. I was so proud of myself. And actually, this is the only bit of the highlight left. I have been working on the Zoeva highlight in the last half of this year, in this year's Pan That Face palette. And so, you know what? Technically, I've kind of got half of these products done. So there's just these two blushes hanging on for dear life. I do always say never, ever, ever roll your Pan That palette into the next year. However, like, look how little of this we have left. This is going to be done by the end of the year. And so I'm really, really excited to keep going on this Zoeva journey, get 2 out of the 4 products done, even if it's taken a little bit longer than a year. This bronzer, again, was a little bit more of that like glowy bronzer product. I've learned that I really do enjoy those more glowy bronzers. They just suit my skin type a hell of a lot more. I just find them really, really flattering for my skin type and I really enjoy using them. I find that bronzers do definitely go by very, very quickly. Blushes though, oh boy, this taught me a lot. There is a hell of a lot of product left and you know what? I have been thinking a lot about these. I think they will be going in my declutter coming up quite soon because I've spent a whole year trying to finish them. And I just don't think I will have these done at all. Even if I dedicate another year to them, they're just not going to be done. And I've not touched them all year. And so I think these have had the time to shine. It's okay to declutter them now. It's okay to say, you know what? We've had a great run, but not anymore. So Zoeva was a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant little Pan That Face palette, but my all-time Pan That Face palette has actually been this year, and it's actually not a palette at all. I know that goes against Pan That Face palette rules, but these are my singles that I've been working on this year. I decided to switch things up a little bit this year. I have been working on face palettes so much that I realized my singles had really been neglected, so I wanted to switch it up. I wanted to use some singles, and this is what they look like now. Obviously, we're not in the finale at all. We've got another month left, but as you can see, I've made some absolutely incredible progress with these. So I have actually Frankened 2 of the products in here. If you watch my Frankening video, you will know. So I've got 1, 2, and the Zoeva little tea. I almost dropped it. My heart. Ooh, this is it. This is all we've got for Pan That Face palette this year. Will they all be done? Probably not. This bronzer is still got a lot left to go, but this blush and this highlight will definitely be gone. I've really loved this year. I feel like working on singles makes me feel more accomplished because I'm finishing more products, it seems like. I know technically I'm not, but I feel like I finished a bronzer, a blush, and a highlight rather than just one face palette. Like, I don't know, it just makes me feel more accomplished and it makes me feel more motivated knowing that I've almost finished 3 separate products rather than one product as a whole. I definitely recommend trying to do some singles if you haven't already. If you've done a dedicated face palette every year, maybe try and do some singles in the coming few years because for me it's really, really changed how I look at Pan That Face palette and it makes me really, really happy. I'm so excited to keep working on them. I'm determined to get the blush and the highlight done this year and have this bronzer roll into next year because I will be finishing them. I've come so far. I've had so many people say, like, why do you even carry on? Like, they're basically done. Just call them done. I've been panning these for a year. If you think I'm giving up now, absolutely not. That's not gonna happen. Like, I need these to be done. Like, pronto. Like, I cannot give up now. It's like running a marathon and giving up with, like, a mile left to go. Like, you can't do that. You can't do it. So this was the Ofra format bronzer. This is Milani Luminoso, and this is the Zoeva highlight that was spoken about the previous year. The order of this ranking are the order that I have panned these products. So I started with the ABH, the next year was the Huda, the next year was the Zoeva, and then this year were the singles. Now, I actually didn't start with the Zoeva highlight this year. I actually started with the Ofra glazed donut. This is my very used and abused glazed donut. However, I realized towards the middle of the year that this was not going to be done whatsoever. There is so much product left in here, and I knew I wanted to finish a highlight, so I just thought, you know what, I'm so close to finishing the Zoeva, I may as well just dedicate the rest of the year to the Zoeva, and I'm really glad I've done that because the sense of achievement is just more. If I'd have carried on with this, I'd have got a really good amount of progress. We'd probably be like, you know, a good way. We'd probably have exposed like the next ring, and that would have been absolutely incredible, but we wouldn't have had an empty, and we're gonna have an empty this year. So I am glad I did that. It was a little bit of a hard decision for me, but it was definitely the right one. 100%. So that is my face palette ranking. Let's move on to my eyeshadow palette ranking. And now this is not in the order that I have panned them. This is in a different order. So are we ready? So technically I have 6 eyeshadow palettes to talk about. However, one of them is 2. I will explain it all in a little bit. So I am gonna obviously rank them from number 6 all the way up to number 1. So now at number 6 is the Sofa X Revolution palette, round 2. I actually panned this 2 years, not in a row. There was a palette in between. However, the round 2 of this was absolute hell, and I discovered why very, very quickly. This was what it looked like only a few months into the year when I just decided, you know what, I can't do it anymore. I just can't do it. I learned a lot from this, and they're definitely lessons I'm going to be taking into my project panning in future. So this is what I mean when I say do not pan a palette after you've already panned it for a year. And I have another palette on this list that is another example of this. Don't do it. I had a really, really strong year with Soph round 1, which I will talk about a little bit later on. Soph round 2 and Soph round 1 are completely different palettes to me. They were such different experiences. Soph round 2 failed so much because I realized something a little bit too late. I realized that the reason I'd done so well in Soph round 1 is because I'd finished all the shades that I actually liked. And with Soph round 2, there was just like the reject shades that I didn't really want to use. So think all the really warm tones, all the bright oranges, shades that just didn't work for me. I don't like using those kind of shades. I love a cool toned blue look. And so the warm tones were the only shades that were left, and I hated every second of it. I think the thought of finishing the palette outranked the realization that like I actually hate all these shades, and I just thought, you know what? I can do some orange looks, it'll be fine. I once again forgot how hard it was to pan a palette, and this definitely highlighted that because oh my goodness me, no, this isn't just going to be 3 quick orange looks and we're done. This is a year of orange eyeshadow, and I couldn't do it. I decided to roll this out very, very quickly, very early into the year. This did not last long whatsoever. There was a really warm toned purple with like a red undertone. I hate those shades with a burning passion. I say all the time, I really hate pinks. I hate those warm tone red purples even more. I think that is the worst shade for me ever. I never like wearing them. I don't think they look flattering on me, but this palette had one of those in there and I was like, yeah, I can finish that. What was I actually thinking? I did manage to finish a few shades in this, but honestly, nothing much, nothing major. This was a massive, massive flop. This was by far my worst pan that palette decision ever, and it deserves to be at number 6, right at the bottom. Now let's go to number 5. This is again another instance of, yeah, I'll just roll it in for another year. What could go wrong? This is Modern Renaissance. And when I started working on this, it was very, very new, especially in comparison to what this looks like later on. I did so well with this, but it came at a cost. This is what the finale picture looked like. Like, it was incredible progress. Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of my Modern Renaissance. But again, I forgot the cheeky fact that I don't like warm tones. Modern Renaissance is like 90% warm tones, so why am I panning it for not just 1 year, but 2? I got to the point after the first year of panning it where I only had a few shades left, and my progress had been amazing throughout that first year. And just like the Soph round 2, the second year was not as amazing. The second year, I got so burnt out and I just didn't want to use it anymore. And so the progress was so slow throughout that whole year because I'd use the palette like 5 times a month. And obviously you're not going to finish any shades using them that little amount of time. I was stuck with like the pinks, the reds, the shades that I didn't want to use. I was stuck with them. And obviously I don't want to use them. So I didn't use them and it took so long. Now with the Soph palette, obviously I panned it for 2 years. I'm counting those as 2 separate slots, even though I'm just counting Modern Renaissance as 1 slot, even though I did pan that for 2 years, because I panned it back to back 2 years. The Soph I had a break in between and they were very different experiences. Modern Renaissance was just a 2-year pan that palette, so that's why I'm kind of giving it 1 slot. I really enjoyed Warm Taupe and Cypress Umber. They were amazing shades. Tempera was the lid setting shade, flew through that. The shimmers were really easy to use and love, and I did really enjoy this palette for the first year, and that's why I thought that I could carry on with it for the second year. And then it's got to about February, March, and I was like, damn, I actually really hate this. But I just kept using it. I kept pushing through. I kept trying to do pink looks, even though I don't like pink looks. And it was just the worst pan that palette. It wasn't the worst ever. Soph round 2 was the worst ever, but it was definitely a really, really negative experience, and it nearly put me off pan that palette. I was working on Modern Renaissance, I think last year, and I really, really could not do it anymore. I'm so glad that I brought a brand new palette in. I was just so free. I felt so free when I brought this year's pan that palette in, because finally I was done with Modern Renaissance. I didn't want to look at it anymore. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. And I'm just so glad that I just got rid of it. Oh my gosh, thank God for that. Don't pan a palette for more than 1 year, especially if you're not that into it. Don't torture yourself. At number 4, I have Soph round 1. This was a brilliant palette. I really enjoyed this palette. This was my first ever proper pan that palette, and it was in my collection for a while. I remember watching Soph when I was really young. She was one of the first YouTubers I watched, and so I was so excited to buy this palette and support her. This is what it looked like at the end of round 1. I'd done some pretty good damage on this, and you know what? This made me fall in love with project panning. This made me really, really excited to continue, and that's because I'd finished shades that I actually liked. So I'd finished like the cool tone grey shade, I finished like the lid setting shade, I'd finished shades that I enjoyed. And that's where you should stop upon that palette, okay? That's where you should stop. You shouldn't roll it in for a round 2, because no, I did enjoy this though. I really did. I felt accomplished. And this is what gave me that drive. This was the palette that started it all for me, and it was really, really, really nice. The quality was not the best, and I think I know that even more now looking back. Back then, I hadn't really tried Anastasia or Huda or, Natasha Denona. I hadn't tried these big, nice brands. I had only really worked with Revolution and very like drugstore quality brands. And so like, it wasn't the best quality in the world. But I was happy. I was enjoying myself. Like little 19, 18-year-old Caitlin was having a grand old time with the Soph X Revolution palette. It definitely wasn't a full palette that catered to me, and obviously we have spoken about that earlier on, so I won't talk too long about this palette, but it was a nice, like, nostalgic look back down memory lane to see and remember all the emotions behind this. It definitely wasn't my favourite thing in the world, but it worked for a really long time, and I finished quite a few shades, and I was really, really happy with it, and I felt really accomplished, and so I'm happy with it. Now, technically, Soph does make an appearance again for a third time, if that can even be believed, but this is slightly different. Now, going back to Soph Round 2, we just spoke about Soph Round 1, the blissful first year. Soph Round 2, you will remember me saying, I rolled this out very, very quickly, and I replaced it with a BYOP. Now, this is a BYOP with a few single eyeshadows. I'd hit pan on quite a few shades. I don't know if I finished any shades. This is what it looked like at the end of that project, so it'll be interesting to look back and see. As I'm filming this, I probably should have swapped the BYOP in Soph Round 1, because honestly, I don't really remember this. Was this like a fever dream? Did this last more than a month? Surely it did. I think it did. So yeah, I think Soph Round 1 and BYOP should be swapped around, but you know what? That's all right. I really don't know what to say about this. I remember this being a massive wave of relief. I think that's why I ranked it higher than Soph Round 1. This was a massive wave of relief because I had been panning the Soph Round 2 for a few months and it was just not going well. This was the first palette that I started panning and I was like, oh no. So I think when the BYOP came in, it was this like, oh my god, like finally, okay, we can actually do this. I threw in some blues, if I remember correctly. I threw in just some shades that actually like worked for me. Shock horror, like panning shades that work for you. Wow. And it also got some really nice use on my singles as well. My singles can get really neglected, and that is what kind of prompted me to do a BYOP instead of just roll in another eyeshadow palette, because I want to use my singles. I have some beautiful singles. I want to use them. So when I say Soph technically comes back a third time, some of these singles were the Soph X Revolution shades that were in the Soph palette. I had franken them and repressed them into singles and I kept using them, but I only kept using the shades that I actually enjoyed, and I just ended up decluttering the really warm tone orange and purple shades that I knew I wouldn't be using, and I've really enjoyed it. It was a definite sigh of relief. It was definitely the right decision to get the Soph out, and I will not be doing that again. There have been a few times where I've thought, oh, maybe I'll roll in a palette for a second year. No, I've learned from the Soph. I've learned from the Modern Renaissance. Even if you think that you're still in love with your Pan That palette, just take a break from it, because sometimes you don't realize how burnt out you are until it just hits you like a train one day and you're already stuck with it. I really like my Pan That palette today that I'm going to talk about in a second. But I'm gonna be putting it back at the end of the year. Even though I like it, even though I still really enjoy it, it has to go back in my collection because I know I'm not gonna be loving it for another year. And this is what this BYOP did teach me, and it was definitely a difficult year this year for project panning. I think so much was going on this year and I just needed a bit of a break from everything, and so it was definitely a good idea to roll this in. Probably not the best idea overall, though. I should have just listened to my gut and just not rolled Soph in again. So now let's talk about number 2, and I'm so excited because this is this year's Pan That palette. This is a mix of That's Taupe and Blue Moon by Colourpop. The Colourpop shades are magnetic, so you can kind of switcheroo them a little bit. Now, I knew that the blues wouldn't be completely finished. Blue eyeshadow is hard to finish, but these were more in this palette to give me some motivation and stop me getting bored from just a completely taupe palette. This is what it looks like currently, or as of the last update. I'm really proud of this. There have been a few slow months with this, but I'm honestly so proud. Colourpop mattes, I have learnt, are absolute hell. I won't open this palette because my update is going live in like 3-ish days. It goes live on the 1st of every month, so it's going live pretty soon, but I'm just looking at this and I'm really proud of it. A few people have said, like, I should just give up because I haven't even finished a shade. I have actually finished a shade, I'll have you know. I finished one shade, but people have been saying, like, oh, you should just give up, like, it's not going very well. I think those people have never worked on a Colourpop palette before. I've learnt this year, Colourpop shades are impossible to finish. Oh my god, I've used some of these shades 200 plus times. They're still kicking. They're still alive and kicking. I don't actually know how. I don't know. But I've really, really enjoyed it. I did start this year thinking that I'd be able to finish a lot more than I have. And would I like to finish more? Obviously, yes. However, I take a step back, Caitlin. Appreciate what you've done. Appreciate how you've done it. Appreciate what you've earned and what you've worked for. This is a brilliant palette. I am definitely starting to get a little bit burnt out now. I'd say around October, I really started to feel it. And I mean, I've been panning this for a year, so I'm not really that surprised. I think you're going to get kind of burnt out, or at least have burnt out spells with anything that you're panning for so long. I'm just really happy that I have got the use on this and that it looks absolutely amazing. It looks beaten and bruised, and I'm so happy about that. This palette has really served me well, and I'm just looking at it and like smiling because it really, really has. It's done incredible, and I have a lot of really, really happy feelings about this. This has definitely been an achievement. It's definitely been a learning curve, let me tell you that for free. Oh my gosh, but I've really enjoyed it. I'm glad that it was a 9-pan palette. I'm glad that I didn't bring in a mega ultra palette. I think a 9-pan is a really, really good just middle ground. It's not too big, it's not too small, it's just right. And I'm really glad that I rolled in these blues as well, even though I've not finished them. They're a really, really good motivator. I think if I'd have just done the That's Taupe, I'd have got really bored really quickly. But I do have these blues to play around with as well, and I'm really, really happy about it. So I'm looking at it now. I know I'm not going to have any other shades finished by the end of the year. That's okay. Could I have done more with this? Yes. But this year has definitely been a year about balancing Pan That Palette and project panning with new in and reviews and things like that. So it has had to share the limelight a little bit, but I've really been enjoying it still. I think it's a fab little palette, and I'll be really sad like putting the Blue Moon shades back in the Blue Moon and like disassembling it, because it's been my little companion. There's definitely a kind of cutoff between number 3 and number 2. Like, I really love this palette, and I think these like more cool toned fun palettes are definitely more up my street, and I will be thinking about that come next year's Pan That Palette, and I will be doing a video where you can help me pick my Pan That Palette for 2026. I do that every single year. You guys do have a little vote on what I'm going to be panning next year, and it's going to be so much fun, so definitely stay tuned for that. I do have a few in mind already, but I don't know, it's going to be a mystery even to me. So That's Taupe and Blue Moon have been absolutely fabulous, but they have not been my favourite. Let me change my camera battery and let's talk about number 1. All right, I'm back and ready to go. Am I slightly off center? Now I definitely am. I got a new tripod and it's not as smooth as the other one. It like jolts too far. So crazy. It's driving me crazy. Right. My number 1 Pan That palette that I have ever done is a little bit of an unexpected one, but this is the e.l.f. Truffles Bite Size palette. I still look back on this palette and smile. It was such a good little palette, and I finished 3 out of the 4 shades of this. I think the size definitely helped it. There wasn't many shades to work on. This is what it looked like at the end of the project. There was just a little bit of the black left, and you know what? If I don't finish a black, that's absolutely fine. It's a black. Black eyeshadows are so difficult to finish. I'm so proud of this. This is such a good little quad. I needed something smoky for Halloween, and I just bought this on a whim. It was like £4. I was like, yeah, that'll do. It was the perfect everyday eyeshadow palette for me. It was the perfect colours, and this is really what got me loving cool tones. Really, really, truly. Taupes really started here for me, and taupes just like became my love from the e.l.f. Bite Size palette. I definitely got my money's worth on this. As I said, this is like £4. I don't think they sell it anymore, which breaks my heart. But this palette has so many happy memories attached to it for me. Whenever I look back on that palette, I just smile. I had this through my 2nd year of uni. It saw me straight through Legally Blonde. This was my Vivian palette. I wore this and Colourpop Ritz for Vivian. The fact that I remember that just proves how incredible that time was for me. It was a really happy time. This palette just, it saw me through it. It was such a nice little quad. It was a shimmer grey, a matte taupe, a matte matte deep brown and a matte black, and it was just exactly what I needed. I would love to pan a smaller palette again. I do worry though that smaller palettes are going to be boring for you guys. Like, I don't want it to be boring for you guys, but I do think that 4 pan was just the right amount of product to where I was using it every day. I was still happy using it, but I wasn't like tethered to it, and it wasn't a chore. Like, I was finishing them quite quickly because there wasn't so many shades to use. I feel like 9 pans are pretty good for pan that palettes as well. However, I have felt the range issue with this. I feel like there is too much choice sometimes. With that 4 pan, you're using those shades. Like, there's not really anywhere else to run. And that might be a really bad thing for some people. It was such a good thing for me. I've often thought, like, should I repurchase this palette? No, I can't do it. That's so stupid. I've spent a whole year panning it, and I have such a massive makeup collection. I cannot pan that palette again. I cannot buy that palette again, mainly because I think it is discontinued. Just for sanity reason, I cannot buy that palette again. That would be such a bad decision. Like, it's in the past. We have happy memories together. Leave it in the past where it belongs. But it was such a good palette. I love this thing so much. And whenever I think of happy project panning memories, this palette always pops up in my brain. And so it's a fab little guy. It's a fab little guy. So this is it. This is my Pan That Palette ranking, all the palettes that I have panned since the start of my panning journey. I really love this video. I'm really happy that I remembered it. I was so worried that I'd forget it when I woke up the next morning. Like I said, I thought of this video idea just as I was going to sleep, and I remember thinking, like, I really hope I remember that in the morning. And I did. Here we are. We're doing it now. So let me know down below if you have panned more than one palette in the past, whether that be a face palette or an eyeshadow palette. Let me know down below. Rank them for me. Maybe it's a palette that I need to keep my eye on. And do not forget, there will be a Help Me Pick my 2026 Pan That Palette coming very, very soon. So stay tuned for that, because that is going to be the start of a new journey. But this is it. This is where I'm going to love you and leave you today, guys. Have an absolutely incredible day. Like and subscribe. We're so close to 7,000 subscribers. I really hope that we can hit it super, super soon. Help a girly out, please. And with that, I will see you tomorrow for a brand new video. Bye bye.